Am I too late? He attached it to me so it would teleport along with me. I'll have to teleport it away with me.
Here, you can have this back. Don't worry, I only teleported a clone.
That's amazing! You can copy my dad's move!
Lord Fourth is actually using mine.
Speed versus Speed, second versus fourth, Tobirama versus Minato. In regards to Naruto power scaling, matchups tend to have some sort of common resolve amongst fans in terms of how they come to agree upon a rational conclusion. Kakuzu versus Pain is a great example in which most people could likely conclude that the fight is close, maybe they're relative in some regards, but Pain should generally win. However, when you have a matchup like Tobirama versus Minato, it's not like that at all. Fans are constantly looking for reasons as to why the opposing side is idiots, and this matchup always had a really interesting atmosphere projecting from it. I've always believed it to be that Minato taking Tobirama's key moves always left fans wondering, well, since their skill sets and arsenals respectively are so similar, who would actually win this battle? Which, as I'm sure you've guessed, that's exactly what I'm here for, to find out who is really the king of speed. However, before we do that, I want to first ask you guys to like and subscribe, as I do put a lot of effort into my content, so it would be greatly appreciated. And if you do happen to like my content, maybe watch some of my other videos or check out my TikTok page where I post nearly every single day. And you guys can also listen to other great quick videos such as How Strong Is He Don? And without further ado, let's get right into this. Now, as both of these characters do have many forms, I think the best one to compare them to would be when they are alive. Because after all, to find out who is the king of speed, both their reputations are there. So we're going to compare them when they are both Hokage whilst alive. In the Edo Tensei, Tobirama is weaker than his alive self, and Minato is several fold stronger and faster than his alive self. So I don't really feel like that's quite a fair comparison. I mean, most of the reputation in regards to speed, as I mentioned, was when they were alive. So with that being said, with Minato being the favor for this matchup generally, I will start with him. Minato Namikaze throughout the series has always been the benchmark set for our protagonist, his son, Naruto Uzumaki, to surpass. In the Kakuzu arc, Naruto created a jutsu that Minato couldn't. In the following arc, being the Pain arc, Naruto surpassed Minato in Sage Jutsu, and yada yada yada. I could literally go on forever. Minato is nowhere near the average shinobi and is in a caliber of his own. As a child, Minato was considered to be a prodigy, seen once every few generations. He was placed on a Genin team, Team 6. It would be on this very team, and he would actually pique Jiraiya's interest in seeing Minato's talent. Seeing this, Jiraiya went on to teach Minato many of his signature techniques and abilities that we know him for today. Minato, still in Team 6 at the age of 15, was shown fighting at the end of the Second War or the beginning of the Third War. It's not really known yet. But here it was shown that Minato had encountered many great shinobis such as Han and Roshi to Jinchuriki, capable of using Bijou bombs. Minato was able to react to their attacks more proficiently than Jiraiya did. Minato also gained the reputation for also constantly having to save his beloved Kushina, who's being captured by enemy ninja constantly. However, around this time, Minato did have one fatal encounter with her, in which Kushina rampaged and stuck her hand straight through his chest. Kurama's chakra is also similar to a poison, as shown against Sakura and Orochimaru, so Minato would have been fatigued, poisoned, bleeding out, and is still able to insert his chakra into her head and fight off the Nine Tails. Now, since this era of Minato's life is very new in regards to content, it's very contentious whether Minato actually scales to a full-powered Kurama here, in which he certainly doesn't, in my opinion. In which, why do I say this? Well, for one, Kurama is extremely suppressed, since we do know that the adamantium ceiling chains do suppress chakra. This is shown via looking at Kurama's head size, as this is a full Kurama and he is literally tiny. The same Kurama who was supposed to be engulfing the entire village is now the same size as Minato. Just his head alone, like, no. Now, for two, the Bijou Bomb is still being charged up and is nowhere near full power. As we can see in the corner, it is still gathering positive and negative energies, which, I mean, I know someone may comment, well, it could be relative, which it's not. A full-powered mental scape Bijou Bomb is far bigger than this, which me just taking eye measurements, I would say it's at least two Karamas put together on top of him. And so, yeah, the one Minato clashed with is literally the size of a tiny Kurama's head. Now, for my final point is it's all in a mental scape. It's not even real, and we have no clue if it even translates to reality or what could physically be possible. So me doing all these mental gymnastics and comparisons was me just being even generous to Minato. Not to mention it's implied that Minato lost the clash regardless, so Minato definitely doesn't scale to a full Kurama. Moving on to the part where Minato's life that he is most well known for, the Yellow Flash in the Third War. In this section, Minato was able to fight on par with A and B at the Cloud. It was these encounters that the fourth data book claimed Minato to be the greatest in godlike speed, in which this doesn't really put Minato above Tobirama, since Tobirama is long dead. Now, yes, I actually have heard an argument that Madara was around at this time, so he'd be praising Minato for this, and I mean, no. Like, Kishimoto shows no signs of what he's wanting to do with Madara's character, and Madara didn't really have any outside interaction, and I highly doubt he was just wanking how fast Minato was to Zetsu. Digressing back to the Third War, he was more than capable of blitzing A's full speed lightning cloak at the time. This would be the same A who is compared to KCM Naruto in the war. However, this is a different A, as we do see him train when Gyuki went on his rampages. A was always the one who stopped him, and since B says you get stronger whilst fighting, A would definitely be stronger whilst at all. Either way, though, Minato does get constantly compared to KCM Naruto during this time. This means that Jonin Minato is somewhere near KCM Naruto, or at least that early KCM Naruto, since B implies that Naruto blitzing Kisame off rip was just like Minato. It could be said that Minato used his insane KCM level speed to blitz platoons of shinobi, and as I'm sure you all know, again, due to his fighting capabilities and unparalleled speed, Anoki of the Stone would put out a direct run-on-sight order for Minato whilst in the Third War. Even whilst the Jonin, it's implied that Minato single-handedly has saved many weak Konoha platoons and carried them to victory. Now, for the final stage in Minato's life, the time of his life that we will be using, his Hokage days, which will also scale above all of these variants we've talked about so far. Minato is certainly the most impressive form of Minato, and well, for several reasons. Most coming from his fight with Kurama and 17-year-old Obito, so I want to deeply analyze this fight, as is again, the version we will be talking about. Then I will ultimately come to a conclusion about its power at the end. Throughout the whole Naruto manga, it was only ever known that Minato died fighting Kurama, ultimately sacrificing himself to save the village. Chapter 440 is the first time we come to find out that Minato had another opponent, the deadly leader of the Akatsuki, the Masked Man. Minato stated that Obito is more than likely the true leader of the Akatsuki and is much more powerful than the invincible Six Paths of Pain. Now, before I directly get into this fight, I need to go over what Minato actually does before their main interaction to judge just if Minato is at his physical peak during their interaction. The start of the scene begins with Obito grabbing Naruto and attempting to stab him, to which Minato responds via body flickering and grabbing a hold of Naruto, to which Obito anticipated, hence to why he placed bombs all over Naruto's back. Minato then notices the bombs, throws the clothes off, blowing up the house they were in, causing Minato's leg to be penetrated by some shrapnel, splinter level. All jokes aside, following this, Minato would react to one of Kurama's giant Biju bombs with his flying rising teleportation barrier, which this is a feat in and of itself and is nothing to scoff at. The fourth data book describes his jutsu as one that creates a crack in space and time, allowing whatever he uses to be moved elsewhere. Now, as it's implied in the war, the amount of chakra used when teleporting something is based upon that size of that thing or the chakra. So as you can imagine, this barrier would probably hit, something along the same principle, since they're both based off flying Raijin. The explosion in the back literally engulfed the entire Hokage mountain, so I'm sure this feat used quite a bit of chakra. Minato also used flying Raijin several times prior to their main interaction, so I won't directly assert that Minato is fatigued or that his combat would decrease. However, I will note that he could be drained. Now, onto the actual interaction with Obito. So the first interaction we get is at the top of the Hokage Rock, in which Obito is creeping up on Minato. However, he was still able to react regardless, moving a more substantial distance than Obito did initially. Obito, being tangible, releases Kamui once Minato's arm was in line with his, and then he was able to catch his hand, and Obito tries to suck him into Kamui, to which Minato is faster than via flying Raijin. After seeing Kamui in action, Minato then concludes that the Masked Man could be Madara Uchiha, since he has a space-time ninjutsu surpassing Tobirama and Minato's, the ability to control the Nine Tails, and has a very dangerous ideology. Now, yes, this scene is commonly misconstrued, and I don't really think Minato's believing he's truly fighting Madara, but it could be true. Following this, though, Minato then directly shows relativity to Obito as they kick off the ground at the exact same time, and they reach the same point at the same time. Just Minato got caught off guard by the chains, to which Minato again was able to blitz Obito's transfer speed with flying Raijin. After that, they charged at each other again with equal speed. Minato just outsmarts and blitzes him, slamming a Rasengan into his back, forcing Obito to retreat. So to recap this section, Minato is an unparalleled figure for his time, demonstrating speed that no one else could ever hope to match. Now, what if I said the same actually applies to Tobirama and his era? In comparison to the Yellow Flash, there's not too much known about him. However, even as a young child growing up in the Warring States period, Tobirama was more than capable of dealing with adult Uchiha in battle and would go on to rival and beat the younger brother of Madara Uchiha, Izuna Uchiha. Some iterations imply that Izuna was actually an equal to him. For me, though, I do think he is under Madara, as that's what fits the most consistently with the narrative at the time. However, they are implied to be a similar level, or at least a similar level to Hashirama and Tobirama's relationship. Following this, though, Tobirama would then show his blatant superiority to Izuna via killing him with Flying Rising Slice. Now, I mentioned, similar to Minato, Tobirama is considered a god of speed as for his time. Even Madara considers him a god of speed. However, the reason as to why this is commonly skipped over and he is downplayed more than anything else is his main loss to Kinkaku and Ginkaku. Now, yes, his encounters are left rather ambiguous, and we do know that he had one, potentially two encounters with these monsters that I have been able to piece together and ultimately find a conclusion as to what really happened and how Tobirama died. So the first one was at a political confrontation between the Leaf and Cloud. During this peace meeting, Kinkaku and Ginkaku actively engaged in a coup d'etat, meaning that it was a betrayal of the Cloud, and Tobirama was ambushed and probably off guard. This is the encounter that Shikamaru seems to be referring to specifically when he says Tobirama was left in really bad condition. Now, hold on to this real quick, as we do need to know about the second encounter to further understand this one. The second encounter wasn't actually with the Gold and Silver brothers. It was actually with a group called the Kenkaku Force, which actually corresponds with what Kakuzu said about the transformed state of Kinkaku. Kakuzu implies that Ginkaku actually died first, and Kinkaku went on a rampage in his beast cloak. One last thing before I can tie this all together, Ginkaku, when he's revived, is actually mad, believing that Tobirama snared him prior to his death, meaning that Tobirama was alive at the time of Ginkaku's death. To tie this whole thing together, at the Peace Summit, Kinkaku and Ginkaku staged a betrayal of the Cloud, catching Tobirama and the second Raikage off guard, attempting to kill them. However, Tobirama actually killed Ginkaku and got away with his life. Following this, Kinkaku, raised at the death of his brother, decided to create a revenge squad called the Kenkaku Unit, all meant to track down Tobirama, to which they finally did, catching Tobirama in a strenuous mission and jumped him with over 20 S-class shinobi, which are literally Akatsuki-level shinobi. Now, some could say to yourself right now, well, if both encounters were fatigued ambushes, how do they scale to Tobirama? Which is exactly my point. These characters do not scale to Tobirama, or at least a more powerful Tobirama. However, what if they did? What they do, is that really an anti-feat? No, not really. Shocker. I know, downplaying Kinkaku and Ginkaku is very popular, as I myself am guilty of this. However, these two are monsters in their own right for a number of reasons. The first is their legendary stage of 6 fast ninja tools. These tools alone in the 4 data book are stated to be above the 5 Kage in power and were once held by Hagoromo himself. The reason why these two can actually wield them is, well, because they're actually direct descendants of Hagoromo. That's not even all, as in the war arc, whilst they're in weakened Edo Tensei states, they're both still goofing off and not really taking things seriously, such as Kinkaku letting his arm get cut off so that he could hit his golden rope at them, or the fact that Kinkaku is able to, or capable of tanking attacks from Kitsuchi, and Kitsuchi being the same character who could hold down the entire Geto Mazo. So since this is really just not an anti-feat, how fast is Tobirama really? Well, in order for us to deduce this, we need to go over his feats in the 4th war whilst in his weakened Edo Tensei body, which would be weaker than his alive self. In chapter 661, Madara actually thanks the heavens and claims that they are smiling upon him because Tobirama is weakened and not as fast as he once was. Madara states that the reason Hashirama and Tobirama can never regain their full power is obviously referring to just how crazy they were and fast and strong when they were alive. Madara further corroborates on this, saying that Tobirama once boasted the fastest speed of any shinobi, meaning that Tobirama should be faster than EMS Madara and Hashirama. This is not even actually far-fetched, as when you delve into the Jubito fight, shocker, Tobirama was the most pivotal character of the entire fight, as he is the one who hits Jubito the most, deduces that he is weak to Sage Energy, and how the perfected truth-seeking orbs work. So the one thing, he was also the only one to replace the seal on him in the very beginning of the fight, which is the only reason why they were ever able to actually hit him. So, Unstable Jubito essentially attempts to blitz Hashirama and Tobirama, to which Jubito finds out Tobirama blitzed him and sees bombs stuck all over his body. Tobirama then bombs the hell out of him with tandem paper bombs, which I will get into their potency later in the video in the abilities section. However, for now, I just need to establish that Tobirama is consistently blitzing unstable Jubito, who is certainly above a yellow mask 17-year-old Obito. Now, I do want to move on to one final thing, which, yes, there are more instances of Tobirama blitzing unstable Jubito, and even him with his teleportation blitzing stable Jubito. But the one thing I want to move on to now is Tobirama blitzing KCM2 Minato. Yes, you did hear me correctly, KCM2 Minato. So essentially, Jubito interacts with Minato, and Jubito places a truth-seeking orb on Minato's right shoulder, to which Minato notices and shows some confusion as to why it's flashing. Minato uses his left arm to try and grab it. However, once Minato starts moving, Tobirama blitzes him and moves a far more substantial distance, grabs the orb with his right hand, and teleports to Jubito, blitzing him with teleportation, trying to slam it into Jubito, which Jubito does react via truth-seeking orbs. Crazy, I know. Now, if you have heard of this feat, I'm also sure you've heard something along the lines of Minato is in a daze, or Minato is in a stupor, or at least something regarding Minato's lackadaisical style of fighting here. This is typically derived from the 4th data book stating cheering up Minato from his stupor or daze is the one who would become a first-class shinobi, end quote. Now, other than the fact that this could just translate to sad rather than stupor, as the kanjis are synonymous, regardless of the Oxford definition of stupor is, quote, a state of near unconsciousness or insensibility, which this does not align with Minato's sense clearly, as he is capable of fighting at least above his base form. However, a more medical definition describes this to be, quote, unresponsiveness from which a person can only be aroused by vigorous or physical stimulation. So if this fight doesn't count as vigorous physical stimulation, then I don't really know what does. Now, my main problem with this is that he definitely isn't in a stupor or a daze, and that's not really what's remotely shown. It would likely just be sadness. So if Minato is just sad, then is he really tiers below in speed? And, well, I'll leave this up to your interpretation, but we do know that mental states are very crucial in Naruto, as shown in fights such as Zabuza versus Kakashi or Hiruzen versus Orochimaru, and, what have you like that. Now, I do believe that Minato's mental state was certainly not at its psychological peak. However, this doesn't just, mean sadness, as there are several moments where Minato shows a sense of anger when thinking about how the Obito he knows now practically betrayed the one who wanted to become Hokage. So this could just be implied to be almost a sense of bloodlust and potentially an amped Minato that Tobirama is outspeeding. However, to wrap this whole point up, again, I would just want to leave this up to your interpretation, because I don't think that Minato can or cannot be justifiably relative to a full-powered KCM2 Minato, who is relative to Biju Sage Moon Naruto later. With that, though, I have no reason to believe it wouldn't be at least around the level of a base Minato, since it is a KCM2 cloak. Following this, though, to finalize the Jubito fight, Tobirama is shown blitzing him with his teleportation. However, Minato has teleportation, so these two trying to just teleport faster than each other is probably unlikely, as they're both instantaneous. Last but not least, though, Tobirama does react to a one-eyed Madara, forcing Madara to hail all that praise that I mentioned earlier. So, to conclude Tobirama's section, I do think that he is faster than Minato by a bit, since he skills two characters such as Unstable Jubito, Alive Hashirama, EMS Madara, and potentially KCM2 Minato, and Minato just scales to a 17-year-old yellow mask Obito. Depending on your interpretation, he could be a KCM2 threat, but again, I've talked about that in my Obito video, which I highly recommend you check out. In regards to reaction and combat speed, I just think that Tobirama's assertions are far higher. After scaling both characters, I think it's fair to go into each of their abilities and their overall respective arsenals. However, this time I actually do want to start with Tobirama, since his arsenal is much more broad, as well as the fact that most of Minato's arsenal did come from Tobirama in some way. Now, yes, Tobirama does actually have all 5 nature transformations, but I wanted to just stick to the primary aspects of his arsenal instead of some niche jutsu that we've never actually seen, such as the Blade of Thunder God. Tobirama obviously has Flying Rising, a space-time teleportation ninjutsu that he commonly uses to slash his opponents or to navigate the battlefield for a strategic advantage, in which Tobirama could use something such as water-style Severing Wave. Severing Wave is a jutsu forming from the stomach to shoot a high-pressure water beam at the opponent he chooses, and the feat that it's actually shown, that opponent happened to be the God Tree, to which Severing Wave had no trouble slicing right through it. These would be the same roots that were able to overpower and throw down KCM Minato as well as Biju Sage Moon Naruto at the same time. Now, I do think that Minato may actually be able to dodge this, since I do believe he does skill above Tobirama in travel speed, as his body flicker or raw movement speed was able to outspeed Tobirama to the battlefield. Now, yes, Minato does have Kurama, so his chakra input would be higher than Alive, but he's also an Edo, which does weaken him, so I've always just chopped it up to be its relative to his Alive state. However, since Tobirama has reaction and combat speed far above him in this fight, I don't really think it's really close anymore still. However, I digress. Tobirama has a jutsu that's best used when giving the opponent the idea that they've won, allowing Tobirama to strike. A perfect example of this would be his water-style Heavenly Weeping, which is a jutsu he tried to catch Madara off guard with. This jutsu actually forced Madara to have to block it with his Susanoo, potentially implying that he'd be incapable of dodging it. Now, the 4 data book describes this jutsu as, quote, like rain falling from a cloudless sky, soundless water needles used to catch the enemy off guard. Water spurted at high velocity from the mouth to snipe at vital spots. So these could be very useful, and Minato tries to blitz Tobirama off start. Tobirama could just use something like substitution, or could just lay on the ground and hit him with these. As it's implied by Killer B, that Minato does actually go full speed off start and try to just kill his opponents instantly. Now, I will say, if Tobirama is able to get off a 10 paper bombs via the Edo Tensei, it is absolutely over, and there's nothing Minato can do. The tandem paper bombs are able to destroy one of Hashirama's gracious deity gates, and were able to tank, which those gates were able to tank and withstand a point-blank Ten Tails blast. As for Minato, he obviously has Flying Rising, as well as a Rasengan, as I'm sure you guys all know. But Minato would likely rely on those two mainly, and probably wouldn't ever try to seal Tobirama, since if it isn't obvious yet, he probably doesn't have many great sealing, as some believe he does. These two are obviously absolute legends of their craft, but Tobirama is the original. So yeah, I do believe that Tobirama beats Minato. Now, I don't quite believe it's a close match, but it's definitely not a stomp. However, I was being extremely generous here for Minato. And if you've seen my TikTok, you're probably aware of this. Now, I do think that Tobirama would have some trouble, but his win cons and his speed are just far greater than Minato's. So Tobirama just displays better feats. So I would give this fight to Tobirama 7 out of 10 times. To finally wrap this up, I do really want to see your guys' opinion on this fight. Do you think Tobirama wins? Do you agree with my conclusion and my assessment? If not, I do highly encourage you to comment down below why, maybe drop what video you want to see next. And if it isn't obvious, I did actually take a lot of time to make this video, and I've done so much research into this topic. So please, if you made it to the end, consider subscribing, especially if you like what you hear in regards to in-depth power scaling, or you just like vibing and listening to Naruto videos. I'm always your guy. Also, don't forget to check out my TikTok page where I post nearly every day. And yeah, with that being said, as always, love you guys.